Skeleton Crew is getting really good. Like, I'm okay. Should I jump into the theories here? Should we jump into some fan theories? I think that what's the pirate's name? Clip that for later too? Yeah. So what's the pirate's name? I forgot his name. That's like force sensitive. So here's what I think with him. I really don't want to say this because Thaddeus Prime is going to laugh at me. I really do think they are trying to set up Grey Jedi, or at least a Grey Order. That's what I think, Jedi or Turbo. I think what they're trying to do is set up a Grey Jedi. I think they're trying to make it very ambiguous. He's not really a Jedi. He's kind of a Jedi. That's why they're like, if you're a Jedi, why can you use the Force? Like, you know, kind of like what was that guy's name in the video games? Dash Rendar or whatever his name was. That was kind of like that. I think he's gonna like Jolie Bendu as well in the old Republic games that we played. He was a Grey Jedi, right? And so I feel like that's what they're trying to go to, is they're trying to make a very ambiguous Jedi user. Can I elaborate on Grey Jedi? Yeah. So it's a fan concept. It's a fan concept that came out from the old EU, right? And it all started with Jolie Bendu from the old Knights of the Old Republic, right? And he was a character that you meet along the way. Revan meets a character who still kind of upholds some of the Jedi code, but doesn't really, and uses both the dark and the light side of the Force. And so people thought that was really cool, that you could be a Jedi and use dark side powers, because that's like a fan fantasy, right? Like every fan wants to be a Jedi, but use dark side powers and still be a good guy. And mic up 10%. Okay, I got you. So that's kind of like the thing is what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants that fanfic of they want to be a Jedi and they want to use dark side powers. But the problem with that is the world that George Lucas built is that the dark side corrupts. And once you start down the path of the dark side, forever will it dominate your destiny. And so that's what happens. That's what happens. You can't just dabble in the dark side and still be a light side user. Now, there can be momentary lapses. Yes, there can be momentary lapses of you going to the dark side and pulling yourself out of it. Because for a Jedi, it's always that inner struggle against self, right? Against selfishness. So a Jedi will always struggle against that. They will always struggle against the dark side. They will always struggle not to fall to the dark side. You want a classic character about that, go look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi was a classic character that struggled against the dark side his whole life. There were so many moments he could have gone dark side, but he never did. And then you see individuals like Dooku who became disillusioned, fully embraced the dark side, right? So there's always been this kind of fan fantasy of, I want to be a Grey Jedi. I want them to exist because I want to be a good guy but use dark side powers. But the problem with that is the dark side corrupts, because the dark side represents selfishness, right? All the powers represents doing something for yourself, while the Jedi and their powers represent being selfless, protective, right? And then you have people like Revan, right? Or like Exar Kun, who I just did a video on and I'm going to release hopefully in a few days. But you have Jedi that are Jedi. They're trying to win a war. They fall to the dark side during that process, similar to Anakin, and they become Sith, right? And then there's a redemption, right? Similar to Anakin. Anakin Skywalker is very similar that way. But there is no, I'm just staying in ambiguity. There's no ambiguity. Now, there is only one other race known that is the middle, which is they don't view the Force as a light or dark. They view it as balance. And that race is the Bendu. It's a race now rather than an ideology. Yusu in the old lore, it was an ideology, right? It was an ideology of the Bendu, which is, if you look at the old EU canon, so back on, I think it was Tathion, I believe it was. It was a planet that both inherently had the light side and the dark side, right? And if you were unbalanced, it would actually disrupt the atmosphere and the weather on that planet. And so when the Jedi Order was being established, one of the core tenets of them was balance, because they learned a lot about the Force from a group of people who called themselves the Bendu, who were just a Force sensitive, like monk type order, right? And so what they believed is that you could use dark side and light side powers, as they were not inherently good or evil, but the key important ingredient of all of that was balance. And if at any time the Jedi got out of balance, where they got too far to the light side, they would have to go and meditate and reorientate themselves to be balanced. If they got too far to the dark side, they were banished to the sister moon, where they could rebalance themselves to the light side. And so that's the old EU, which makes sense because that's pretty much what Qui-Gon is. Qui-Gon is a Jedi that sought out the will of the living Force and sought out balance more than anything else. Like, that's all he cared about. And then he cared about the prophecy of the chosen one. And so, that's why he didn't do things quick por quo, as you'd say. And what's really interesting about that is because the council knew he was kind of a maverick, they assigned to him Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was very much a maverick, but because he almost got passed up as a Padawan, he became more back in line with what you would consider a traditional Jedi, because he didn't want to mess up, get kicked out of the order, not become a Jedi Padawan, or not become a Jedi Knight. So it was a really interesting dichotomy that they both were like paired together. And Qui-Gon originally didn't want Obi-Wan, but he kind of begrudgingly agreed to get, be his master and him to be the Padawan. And what was really cool about that is that they were just really complementary of each other. And then, of course, when Qui-Gon sees in the Force that he's going to become even more wiser Jedi than Qui-Gon Jinn. And you think about it, guys, Qui-Gon Jinn is the one who figured out how to become a Force ghost, retain his essence, and still become one with the Force. And you think about that. So think about what Obi-Wan Kenobi was like for that. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi is freaking awesome. Now, I will say here, and let me differentiate this, Corvus. So your comment is Obi-Wan the greatest Jedi? Don't correlate greatest Jedi with most powerful Jedi, because he was not the most powerful Jedi, but probably he was the greatest Jedi ever. Because you think about all that he went through, all the pain and turmoil, and he never turned to the dark side. He was freaking like, he is literally like when you walk into a church and you see a picture that's Obi-Wan Kenobi instead of Jesus, and you're like, ha! They didn't know who they were putting a picture up of, but that's really what he's like, man. He's like the Jedi Jesus, He is like the Jedi Jesus. He is the Jedi. He is the best of the best. You think about it, man. He saw almost not becoming a Padawan, right? Then he becomes a Padawan to a begrudging Qui-Gon. He wins Qui-Gon over. Then he sees his master, who he loves, get killed in front of him by a Sith Lord. Then he becomes a knight because he completely skipped his trials, because there's no one that ever encountered a Dark Lord of the Sith and overcame them in centuries. And he did it. And so they're like, yeah, that proves that he is a Jedi. And then, not only that, during the Clone Wars, he has to suffer from going back to Mandalore, where he had the love of his life, Satine, that he would have abandoned the Jedi Order for if she said yes. But she was smart, and she's like, no, you serve the galaxy better as a Jedi. So he agreed, and he's maintained a Jedi. And then he goes through all this stuff with Maul again and his brother, seeing other Jedi killed, seeing Anakin slowly falling to the dark side, the stuff going on with Ahsoka. He sees all of that. And then, Maul takes and kills her in front of him. And he sees all that. And he never falls. And what does he tell Maul right before he kills Satine? Because he thinks he's going to kill him. And he says, you can kill me, but you can never defeat me. It takes strength to resist the dark side. Only the weak embrace it. And it's like, dude. And then when he has his final battle with Darth Maul in the freaking desert of Tatooine, and he says, look what you've become, a rat in the desert. He's like, bro, you have no idea. You don't have the perspective. You're looking at my fleshly form. You don't know the spirit of the Jedi that's in me and who I am. And he says, look what I have risen above. And it's like, boom. That is the most Jedi of Jedi things you could do. Now, Anakin could have become the most powerful Jedi to ever exist. Yes. He is the Obi-Wan is the best Jedi to ever exist, and Anakin could have been the most powerful Jedi to ever exist.
Make sure to like and subscribe, or we will execute Order 66. Check out our other videos on the screen as well.
Yes, my lord.